Hey everybody, and thank you for checking out Calcent Gaming. I appreciate you coming to the channel. If you haven't yet, please remember to hit that subscribe button. That's the best way to help me out and keep some more videos coming out. Today we're going to talk about Paladins and why they are the #1 class played on Baldur's Gate, and also which race might be the best race to be. This is all my own opinion. Outside of an article came out earlier today that was saying that the #1 class that's being played in the game right now is the Paladin, which makes me happy to hear. I've been a huge Paladin fan since years and years ago, several decades even at this point. Play it in every game that it's an option. Loving the way they've got it built in this game. If I'm honest, I think it's quite possibly, though, because of the movie Dungeons and Dragons and how awesome the Paladin was in that movie, and maybe everybody wants to get in on some of that action, you know what I mean? But when you come in to create your first character, obviously there's many other options, and I think Sorcerer was the #2 class that's being played right now. But a Paladin is basically a warrior that has holy powers, can do additional damage with holy damage, also has the ability to heal themselves as well as their group, depending on which spells and path you take. Right now, you can see I'm listed as a human paladin, which is what I actually play as my main character right now. But I will be doing a second pass-through, trying out some of these other paladin options. But after really investigating this a little bit further, you know, of course I like the human. That's the #1 race that's played, and I think the second is elf, or maybe they're close to tied. And a high elf at that. So every time you click through, right, you have your main race, and then you have a sub-race, so you can select the differences there. Each option has additional bonuses. Like, the amount of detail in this game is incredible. So you really want to look at, like, what are the extra bonuses, and will that impact the way you want to play the game? For me, the human one was just kind of straightforward and consistent with what I usually play anyway. Human versatility is nice. You get a couple extra proficiency points that you get to choose. And you also get to carry a little extra stuff. Your carrying capacity is increased by a bit, but not too much. Just says a quarter, so, you know, it's not even like half of it. But you also get some weapon proficiency and spears and pikes and halberds and glaives, and light armor and shields. Well, you pretty much never wear light armor as a pally, and you can have a shield. I personally go with the two-handed weapon, you know, which is spears and pikes and halberds, but I use like the two-handed maces, the swords, some axes maybe, and sometimes some halberds and glaives and stuff too. But that's not really a huge bonus when you really look at it, because over here on the right you'll see proficiencies. You already get simple weapons and martial weapons, and that covers almost everything you get, at least through Act 3 that I've started playing at this point on my main character. Spears and pikes and halberds and glaives, yeah, they're pretty good, but it's not like a huge game changer. You know, so I don't know. I didn't really think about this stuff when I first started the game. I just wanted to be a paladin and make something that I recognize and represented me. Right off the bat, I went to my go-to. It's usually, you know, a boring human, like I think most of us probably are playing, it sounds like. Or an elf. I was really torn between the two, but I didn't really see any major advantages to being an elf. Outside of the dark vision, I guess. But I don't really use bows, and I'm already proficient with swords because I'm a paladin. So that wasn't really an extra bonus at all. However, go through each one to make your own decision, but if I was going to tell you when I reroll, I'm going to actually be a half-orc, which is definitely abnormal for something I would normally choose. But with the way you can edit them, you can make them look really good. I mean, this guy's kind of got a big round head, and, you know, nothing wrong with that. Some of the most fierce warriors do look like that. I usually put hair and a beard for my pally, whether they're human or a dwarf. They're usually my top two. And I'll probably do the same thing with my half-orc here. But the reason I recommend considering this at least, is you get the dark vision, which can be helpful, but relentless endurance is super good. If you reach 0 hit points, you regain 1 hit point and don't die, basically. So you have the ability to stay alive for that, and possibly that will give you an opportunity to heal yourself back up without dying, without having to use a resurrection scroll or anything like that. That's a very powerful passive ability that this race has. And then, of course, you get Savage Attacks, which land a critical hit with a melee weapon attack. You deal an extra dice of weapon damage. That's crazy. That's like super good. And I never even looked at it because I was judgmental, and I'm like, no, I don't want to be an orc. Now that I'm looking at this stuff, I'm like, oh, you know what? Maybe I do want to be an orc. So that's the one I'm going to roll with next. I'd love to hear which choice you went with, if you're even a paladin. If you're not, which race did you go with? What was your reason for it? If you're not a paladin, why not? You should play them. They're awesome. But I am very biased because I just have a big love for the idea of the class and what they're supposed to be all about. And then we go beyond just the race, right? We then got the subclasses, right? And so those also can make a big difference in your gameplay. So as you're going through, it's really important to know what kind of game you want to play and what kind of character you want to be. These choices, including your race, all have an impact on how you're treated in the game, how you act as a character, and any possible repercussions that you might have for the actions you take in the game. Oath of the Ancients is probably more of a neutral stance where you can kind of ignore some things but also need to follow a path of goodness and righteousness. This is the one I personally chose for my main character because of the healing radiance spell. Oath of the Ancients tenets is, pretty self-explanatory. Just do good things, basically. But the extra healing is a big reason I like paladins in general. They almost always have it in their class. And lay on hands, of course, is a big one. So I wanted that and make sure I had that extra healing just in case it was needed while I was in combat. And over here you got Oath of Devotion, which gives you an additional spell. Instead of the healing spell, it gives you Holy Rebuke, which allows you to grant an ally Vengeful Aura that deals additional radiant damage, to anyone who hits them with a melee attack. So that's pretty good, especially if you played World of Warcraft. It sounds like it's very similar to a Retribution Aura, or how it used to be in the old days, where if somebody hits you, they take a little bit of holy damage. That's basically what this is. And then you have Oath of Vengeance, which is actually a little bit harder to play because you are pure, if it's evil, if it's got a bad rap, you're going to slay it kind of attitude. You're just there to deliver justice, as it says. But you get this additional spell, Inquisitor's Might. You can cast it on you or an ally, and their weapon or your weapon deals additional radiant damage. And you can also daze the enemy, which is helpful. But if you want to do more damage and be a vicious paladin that goes out there and just slays evil, this might be the path you want to go on. Well, obviously you can do that with all the paladins. I went with Oath of the Ancients because I like to play a little bit more defensively, where Oath of Vengeance is maybe a little bit more of an offensive play. Oath of Devotion is kind of maybe a mix, but really you get lay on hands in all of them, so that's helpful at least. So it just really depends on the playstyle you want to play and the different options you want to have as a character playing through the game. One other thing I want to point out is make sure you're reading the armor and your proficiencies in that, because you're automatically proficient in heavy armor, and as you're playing through the game you'll get the option to become proficient in new options, and heavy armor is actually one of them on there, and there's no need for you to take it because you have it naturally as a paladin class. So look for small details like that. Your skills you can change up a little bit and choose that as you're going through. But I just thought it was really fascinating to hear how many people were playing and Paladin being the #1 class, specifically a human Paladin or a High Elf Paladin being the top two. And then Sorcerers, of course, like I mentioned earlier, are the second option. And then you can also differentiate yourself with all of these different options here as well. I went with Outlander because I like the idea of athletics and survival. Soldier's pretty good, athletics and intimidation. These are just things that give you a couple of extra bonus points that help you out through the game. Each one has its pros and cons, so it's really fascinating how different you can make your character based off of all of these very small options just in the character creation. Like, it's really incredible. The game is so well done that, like, your character creation is some of the most important things you can take your time going through before you start the game. So I really do recommend, like, making sure you go through every option and really understand the character you want to play. And that's not just for the Paladin class, it's true for all of the classes. Like, if you don't want to be a Paladin, but you want to see, you know, I don't know, a Sorcerer, since that's number 2 apparently, and just play through it like that, make sure that all of the options you get as you go through that make sense for the play style you personally want to play. And the game will adjust the story based off of these decisions. So this is something to keep in mind. I just wanted to do a short video kind of going through the Paladin and the options. Like I said, I went with the Outlander. I think it's pretty well rounded. I think Folk Hero is pretty straightforward too, for a Paladin especially. I didn't think animal handling really fit me that well, even though I talk to animals fairly often in the game. That's an option too, by the way. You know, the skills are what you really want to look at and decide what you want for your own gameplay. Athletics and survival just made sense to me, so that's what I went with. Charlatan is kind of funny. Could do that. Criminal, I definitely didn't feel like it felt the Paladin role, at least as I play it, but I'm certain there are some Paladins out there that that's the route they wanted to take. So I'd be curious to hear why and how that's working out. I don't even know what Urchin is. Sleight of hand and stealth. Alright. So that's kind of it right now. I just, like I said, wanted to go over Paladins, why they're so good. Lots of damage output, survivability, proficiency in all sorts of armors, and they can self-heal and heal their group. Half-orc, I think it's pretty awesome. The ability that you might get knocked out and you don't get killed. That can be very, very helpful. I can definitely think of some fights in my main game where I would have wished I had that several times, in fact. Let me know in the comments, though, what you're playing, what your preferences are, and why. I'd be really curious, just to keep the conversation going. And if you haven't yet, please remember, subscribe. That's the best thing you can do to just help a guy out. Keep more videos coming out. I know this one's kind of short and brief, because it's really just about why Paladins are number 1 and all the options you have with them. But I hope to hear from you soon. Subscribe, like the video, and please come back for more. Thank you so much. We'll talk with you soon.